Hi, welcome to Surviving Together. I'm Sharon Switek, and this is my story, part 1. So, I'm going to try and get through this the best that I can. My story starts in regards to my sexual abuse when I was 4 years old. I had wanted to go to a neighbor's house where my brother had been allowed to sleep over. He's 3 years older than I was, and I wanted to sleep over too. Begged and begged and begged and begged my parents, and they said, all right, as long as my brother was going, as long as they allowed it, they had a girl who was just a little bit older than I was, said you can go too. So I was allowed to sleep over one night. I was put in the living room on the floor, which I thought was a little odd that I couldn't sleep on the couch that I was laying directly in front of. But, oh well, I was told that there might be somebody else later who might need the couch, so therefore I was left to have the floor. I don't remember a whole lot of this particular incident. One, because I was so young. Two, I didn't have the words to talk about it, to explain it. I didn't really understand anything that happened. What I do remember is the father coming into the living room. I thought he was coming through to get a drink into the kitchen. I don't know if he eventually went into the kitchen or not. I do know that this is the start of my fear, my deep, deep uncomfortableness of anything being put in front of my face. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's blocking my face, if it's covering my face, I will start to panic. I remember a feeling of something being put in front of my face. I do believe that it was a couch pillow. I don't 100% know what happened next. I do believe that there was some touching underneath my nightgown at that point in time. I do distinctly remember sleeping the rest of the night as stiff as a board. My arms straight out at my sides, my legs straight together, and pretty much just staring up at the ceiling, wondering when morning was going to come. And as soon as it was light, and as soon as people started moving throughout the house, I asked to go home. And that is the last time that I ever went to that house. And it was only 2 doors down from mine. But I refused to speak with anybody in that family again. It wasn't too many months after that we moved, so it wasn't a huge issue. And it's not as if it ever became an issue where my parents would question, well, what's going on? You used to always want to go over there. Why is there something different now? So we moved. The next period, I should say the next incident in my life began when I was about 6 or 7, somewhere in there. And this was at our new house that we moved to. Again, this was at a neighbor's house. And they had a daughter who was a little bit younger than me and a boy that was a little bit older than my brother. I don't know if some of you may not recall this, others of you may, people of my generation. Refrigerators, stoves, things of that nature used to get delivered to the house in these big, huge boxes, and they would have to take them apart from there. And they would often take them out in one piece, meaning the box would still be in a full piece put together. And those became our tunnels to play in. And we would have those in the basement of whoever's house got delivered appliances that particular time. And everybody was always very excited. Somebody got appliances delivered. Yay, we're going to get to have boxes to play in. Always very exciting when you're 6 years old. Unfortunately, those boxes are also a great place to hide away. And I would sometimes crawl through them, often on my own. I played a lot on my own as a child. The brother, who I'm guessing was about 6 years older than I was. So he was 12, 13, I think maybe 14 by the time we moved, somewhere in there. And he asked to play doctor one day. You didn't think too much of it. I mean, you'd often heard about playing doctor. And I remember being kind of uncomfortable the first time because he did want to play doctor in terms of looking at parts underneath my clothes. And I was always taught that those were my parts. So I said no. The next time that it happened, I said yes, because I wanted desperately somebody to play with. And this did become a reoccurring thing for a few visits. Then one time, they didn't have the boxes anymore. And I was asked to go into his room to play. And again, somebody was willing to play with me. And I was excited. Sure, let's go in there. I don't care. Just somebody was play with me. And you have to understand it. I love my family. I love my brother. But my brother was very self-sufficient before I came along, and he was very self-sufficient after I came along. We did not play together very much. And we have very different interests as we grew up and now as we are grown. So the fact that somebody was willing to play with me was still very thrilling for me. And I was willing to do anything to have that happen. At this particular point in time, it did progress beyond looking into some touching with hands and with parts. And I don't want to get too graphic. It's not what this is about. But I think you need to understand where the progression came for me, as you'll understand some of the things that happened later on in my life. So a year or so later, we ended up moving from that house. Again, it didn't really become an issue as to why I didn't really play over there as much anymore, why I stayed closer to home. We moved every 3 years when I was growing up, so you may hear me reiterating this refrain a lot, and it's because we were constantly moving. My dad was working for a company, and every time he got a promotion, we were moving to a new city. The next incident happened while we were still living in the same house. However, this time it was with somebody significantly older than myself. It was friends of the family. We would end over there on a Friday or a Saturday night. The parents were friends with my parents, and not having the money for a babysitter, my brother and I would be brought along. Their child was 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there. Really wasn't anything for my brother or I to do. We kind of tried to amuse ourselves as best we could. They did have a big train set up in the basement. And when I mean big, I mean big. I'm talking about train tracks glued to pieces of plywood set on sawhorses throughout the entire basement as the train would go along on the tracks. it was love between the father and the son. So we often play on that. I don't really know how it started, but I do remember the son speaking to me more and more, wanting to play with me more and more, which again for me it was flattering and thrilling because I didn't have a whole lot of people to play with. So somebody wanted to play with me specifically. That was great. I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. I still didn't know the full extent of how to speak for myself, especially when it came to these incidences of sexual abuse. Later on, I didn't speak about any of the things that happened to me, whether it was with the older child, the older neighbor child, or with this young man, because I didn't think that I was a victim. While I knew something wasn't right, the neighbor boy was still a boy. And it would be many, many, many years before I learned that there was such a thing as child-on-child sexual abuse. In regards to the other incident, while I definitely knew that there was something wrong with this older boy, this gentleman, having an interest in me, a sexual interest in me, there was never any touching. There was never anything of that nature. It was more of show and tell. You show me yours, I'll show you mine type of thing. So because there was not any physical contact, again, I didn't feel like something really wrong had been done to me. And it would be many, many years later that I would actually be able to discuss these feelings, put words to these feelings, and be able to figure out that, yeah, it was wrong, and that I wasn't wrong to feel like something was done wrong to me. So those are my childhood incidents. If any of this resonates with any of you, particularly the feeling like you have a bullseye on your forehead that says sexual assault victim, I get it. I felt like that for a lot of my years. And as I'll be discussing in my next video, it only continued as I got older. So that's where I'm going to leave this video for right now. I will be discussing some of my later years in my next video as I started to get into my early teens and then into my college years. Hugs and love. Thanks for listening.